Puta madre!
Excuse me.
It's not your business.
All good, boss.
Aguanten.
I was respectful. You weren't. Don't come back.
Vámonos.
Vámonos, ya, vamos.
We need to get back to work.
Was that some military shit?
You didn't see anything.
Shredded chicken. Grandma made you some handmade grandma tortillas.
Why is everyone always feeding me?
Get my back if I ever need it.
Sure, Jenny.
See ya.
I don't like this. I'm alone in the bed all night.
Hope you don't mind. I was hungry.
You know who I am.
Make yourself happy. Tell me. Whatever Russian gangsters like to call themselves these days.
You slaughter our soldiers. You will be hunted for 3 generations.
That's for slapping that woman this morning. Here's your money. I'm looking for a young lady. I'm looking for her.
Jimmy, come here, домой.
All of this is for a girl?
I'm gonna bring her home.
You looking for something?
My interests are strictly pharmaceutical, brother.
Are you a cop?
Nah.
Run your pockets, Chief. Put it on the table.
I didn't come here to be disrespected.
Get him. Enough! You ain't a cop. You're a working man.
Sounds about right.
Have a seat, brother.
Black Dodge Ram hiding in the trees.
Okay, we're pulling up now. Naru! Что я сказал? Фастер, быстрей! Давай!
Show me your hands.
You didn't see us here.
We'll take it from you.
How do you know Dimi? What is your business with Dimi?
Do you know who we are?
They are people whose ma dresses them funny.
Come closer and she dies.
I figured that.
He's in there! Everybody, lock and load.
Stir my six.
What's that mean?
Follow me. Let's kill this guy. See you on the other side.
What was that?
The film kicks off on a quiet morning at a bustling construction site. We meet Levon Cade, a former Green Beret who's now traded in his combat boots for steel-toe ones, working as a foreman. Calm and commanding, Levon calls his crew in for a quick morning briefing. Even though he's clearly been through some serious stuff, Levon's as humble as they come. Folks respect him, some even like him enough to bring him food. One of the workers hands him a meal with a grin, and Levon nods in thanks. Big inspection today, Levon announces, his voice even but firm. Let's keep it tight and sharp. To motivate the crew, he promises a little extra cash for their hard work, not because he has to, but because that's just the kind of boss he is. After the briefing, Levon hands over the workers' attendance reports to the construction company's owners, a family trio, Joe Garcia, the dad, Carla, the mom, and their only daughter, Jenny. Jenny tells her dad she's throwing a party tomorrow night to celebrate finishing her first college semester. Joe doesn't love the idea. He'd rather she practice piano instead. But after a little pushback, and knowing how Jenny gets teased for being such a homebody, he gives in. Just as Levon wraps things up and turns to leave, chaos erupts. A bunch of thugs show up and start beating the hell out of one of the workers. Levon sees red. The soldier in him snaps awake. Without hesitation, he grabs a handful of nails and launches them like darts, starting an all-out brawl, one man versus a gang. And Levon wins, brutally. Worker, bloodied but grateful, calls him a hero. Jenny's impressed too, so much so, she asks Levon to teach her how to fight. Turns out, she used to be a karate champ back in high school. Go figure. Later that day, Levon heads to his former in-laws' place to pick up his daughter, Mary. It's her birthday. But before he can take her out, he has to get past Dr. Roth, Mary's grandfather, and a man who clearly can't stand him. Still, Levon's respectful. He asks for permission, gets Mary, and takes her to a nearby restaurant. There, he gives her a birthday gift, a framed photo of Mary and her mom, who passed away years ago. It's then we learn the real reason Dr. Roth despises Levon. He blames him for his daughter's death. But Levon sets the record straight. Quietly, he tells Mary the truth. Her mother took her own life, crushed by depression, while Levon was deployed overseas for years. He was halfway across the world, fighting battles, and came home to find his family shattered. The next day, Levon meets with a lawyer. Dr. Rod's been throwing money at attorneys, trying to cut Levon out of Mary's life once and for all. But Levon doesn't back down. He's ready to spend every last dime from his military pension to fight for custody. With nowhere to go, Levon finally moves into a cheap rental. For the past year, he's been living out of his car. Meanwhile, Jenny's out partying at a nightclub, drunk and carefree with her friends. What she doesn't know is that she's being watched. Johnny, the bartender, works for a human trafficking ring. When Jenny steps away to help her friend who's puking in the bathroom, Johnny makes the call. The moment Jenny exits the restroom, she's ambushed, snatched by a twisted couple named Viper and Artemis. They throw her into a car and disappear into the night. The next morning, Levon finds Joe and Carla, frantic, devastated. Jenny's been missing since Saturday night. They suspect the cops were paid off by the syndicate. Joe, desperate, turns to Levon. He knows the man's past, ex-Green Beret, master tracker, and fighter. He begs Levon to find his daughter, offers to pay anything. But Levon turns him down. "I'm not that guy anymore," he says quietly. And yet, later that night, Levon finds himself deep in the woods, visiting an old war buddy, Gunny. Gunny's blind now, a casualty of their final mission, but he's alive, thanks to Levon. Levon talks to him about Jenny, about the kidnapping. Gunny understands immediately. Levon's asking for permission. Permission to go back to war. Gunny gives it. The next day, Levon visits Joe at home. He sits quietly in Jenny's now empty bedroom. He confesses that out of all the bosses he's worked for, Joe's the only one who ever treated him with decency, made him feel like part of a family. So he makes a promise. He'll bring Jenny home. That same day, Levin quits his job and begins the hunt. His first stop, the nightclub. He scopes the place out and spots Johnny mid-drug deal, acting shady as hell. Levin doesn't need proof. His gut tells him Johnny's involved. He follows Johnny back to his apartment, sneaks in, and confronts him with a shotgun. Johnny refuses to talk, so Levin turns up the pressure, violently. Mid-interrogation, two of Johnny's cronies show up with drug money. They hear the commotion, rush in, and wind up dead. Levin wipes them all out, grabs Johnny's phone and cash, and waits. At dawn, a black SUV pulls up. Out steps Wolo, now revealed to be a high-ranking Russian Bratva captain, along with his nephews, Dania and Vanko. They find Johnny's corpse and assume it was just a robbery gone bad. Wolo hires a cleanup crew, covers the tracks, and heads home, not realizing Levin is tailing him in silence. Back at Wolo's place, Levin sees the man's marriage is on the rocks. Once Wolo's wife storms out, Levin slips inside and beats him senseless. When Wolo wakes up, he's tied to a chair. He quickly realizes Levin was the one who took the money, but Levin tosses it back at him. "I'm not here to rob you," Levin says. "I'm here for a girl, one your people took." Wolo, completely in the dark about the kidnapping, blew a fuse when he found out his son, Dimmy, was behind the shady entertainment syndicate. Despite Dimmy's constant screw-ups, Wolo still stood by him, even going as far as threatening Levin, boasting about their ties to the most powerful Russian mafia. He warned that if Levin killed him, he'd be opening a can of worms. But Levin, unfazed by the threats, took matters into his own hands and drowned Wolo in the pool. After hearing Dimmy's name, Levin started digging into who this guy really was. Meanwhile, Dania and Vanko, along with their father Simon, another mafia boss, showed up at Wolo's place. Seeing his brother's gruesome end, Simon ordered his sons to hunt down the culprit. Elsewhere, Levin reached out to Alex, a former soldier now working with the Narcotics Enforcement Agency. He asked for intel on Dimmy, who's connected to the Bratva Mafia. Alex explained that the Bratva had greased enough palms to be untouchable in the city, but tipped Levin off about a bar that's a hotspot for Russian amphetamine deals. He hoped Levin might find some answers there. That night, Levin headed to the bar. His presence caught the eye of Artemis, the CCTV monitor and Viper's girlfriend. She told Doggy to kick Levin out, but instead, Doggy took Levin to meet a local dealer named Dutch after getting a hefty bribe. Dutch, a former paratrooper, decided to test Levin by having his goons attack him. Levin quickly took them down, impressing Dutch enough to agree to a partnership. He told Levin to go to a specific location to pick up some drugs. Levin arrived and met with Artemis and Doggy, but was only handed an old-school cell phone. After the exchange, he returned to his car and received a call from Dutch, who said the real stash was under the car seat. Levin immediately ditched the drugs, as his main goal was to find Dimmy. Later that night, Artemis and Viper transported Jenny, stuffed inside a suitcase, to meet their client. They took her to a room, intending to assault her. However, moments later, the client stormed out with a nasty bite on his cheek, courtesy of Jenny. Furious and injured, he refused to pay Artemis and Viper. Meanwhile, Levin got a call from Dutch, informing him that their boss wanted a meeting. The next day, Levin met with Dutch and his boss, who turned out to be Dimmy. Seeing Dimmy face to face, Levin's anger boiled over. But sensing the timing wasn't right, he played it cool, pretending to be interested in a business partnership. He then returned to his place and checked out Johnny's phone, which he'd previously taken. In it, he found a photo of Johnny at a bar. Levin went back to that bar to keep an eye on things from a distance. However, his surveillance didn't go unnoticed. Artemis, known for her keen observation skills, spotted him and ordered her crew, including the newly arrived Dania and Vanko, to chase him down. Levin made a quick getaway on a patron's motorcycle, leading to a high-speed chase through the forest. During the escape, he crashed and was found by a female police officer on patrol. But when Dania and Vanko showed up, the officer handed Levin over to them after being bribed. Tied up in their car, Levin waited for the right moment. As they prepared to take his life, he fought back. A fierce struggle ensued, resulting in the driver's fatal injury and the vehicle plunging into a riverside ditch. Levin then neutralized both Dania and Vanko with a pistol and sank the car along with their bodies. The next day, Simon found his son's bodies at the morgue. He declared that the conflict with Levin had escalated into a major war. Meanwhile, Viper and Artemis were summoned by Dimmy, who berated them for their failure, especially since their client ended up injured. Dimmy ordered them to silence Jenny, blaming her for the fallout. Simon then convened a meeting with other underworld leaders, declaring war on Levin. He and his men stormed Dimmy's nightclub with assault rifles, causing chaos as patrons scrambled for safety. Simon unleashed his fury on Dimmy, accusing him of mishandling the situation. Dimmy, unaware of the fate of his father and Simon's sons, was left speechless. Upon seeing a photo of Levin as the culprit, Dimmy was shocked to realize that the man he'd tried to partner with was his father's assailant. He then handed over Levin's identity to Simon. The following day, Dr. Rod was interrupted during his online yoga session by Simon's henchmen. At the same time, Levin received a call from the school principal, informing him that Mary hadn't been picked up. Since Dr. Rod was always punctual, Levin rushed to get Mary himself. They then headed to Dr. Rod's house, only to find it engulfed in flames. Levin bravely entered and found Dr. Rod alive but tied up. After rescuing him, Dr. Rod revealed that two men had come looking for Levin. He blamed Levin for dragging his family into danger, but still expressed gratitude for being saved. Realizing the city was no longer safe, Levin took Mary to Gunny's place. Upon arrival, he asked Gunny to look after Mary while he dealt with the Russian organization. Before heading out, Gunny provided Levin with a full set of gear, including the M14 rifle they once used on past missions. After gearing up, Levin bid farewell to Mary, promising to return safely. Meanwhile, Artemis and Viper took Jenny into the woods to eliminate her. However, during the journey, Jenny fought back, causing their car to crash into trees. She then fled into the forest, leaving them scrambling to find her. Jenny was walking alone down the road when she ran into a police officer she recognized from before. Relieved, she asked him to take her home. What she didn't know was that the officer was secretly working with the criminals. Instead of bringing her back to the city, he drove her straight to Artemis and Viper. Just as the two were about to finish her off, their phone rang. It was the customer. He'd had a change of heart. Not only was he not canceling the payment, he now wanted Jenny brought to him in person. Meanwhile, Levin stormed into Dimmy's club like a man on a mission. He tore through Dimmy's men in a relentless, no-mercy rampage. Panicked, Dimmy grabbed a woman and held her as leverage. But Levin didn't flinch. He shot Dimmy in the hand and told the woman to run. Levin then pressed Dimmy for answers. Where was Jenny? Dimmy looked genuinely confused. He couldn't wrap his head around the fact that Levin had just dismantled most of his crew for one girl. He eventually admitted the truth. Jenny had been taken as part of a trafficking ring he ran with Viper and Johnny. Their operation was simple: abduct young women and sell them off. After that confession, Levin forced Dimmy to take him to where Jenny was being held. They drove deep into the forest. When they arrived, Dimmy tried to justify his actions, said he knew it was wrong, but if he didn't run the business, someone else would. The money was just too good. Levin looked him dead in the eye and asked, "Do you have a daughter?" Dimmy shook his head. No. That was all Levin needed to hear. Dimmy would never understand what it felt like to see your little girl in pain. Levin ended it right there. Elsewhere, Dutch had just received orders to take Levin down for dismantling the boss's crew. He rallied all his men and began the hunt. Levin had already started infiltrating the Bratva compound, taking out the guards one by one with surgical precision. Back with Jenny, she was finally brought face to face with the customer, but he didn't want to violate her anymore. He wanted to inflict pain. Before he could lay a hand on her, a grenade came crashing through the window. Boom, chaos erupted, the customer panicked. Levin swept through the building like a ghost of vengeance, neutralizing the Bratva soldiers without breaking a sweat. Then came Dutch and his biker gang, but they didn't stand a chance. One by one, Levin cut them down until only Dutch was left. They faced off. Dutch was built like a tank, but brute strength was no match for Levin's experience. The fight didn't last long. Levin took him out. Then came the final wave. Levin tracked down and killed the customer. He found Viper and beat him to death with his bare hands. Jenny, fierce and fearless, took out Artemis herself. Just as Levin was freeing Jenny, Simon and two of his goons showed up. Right behind them, a police car rolled in to secure the scene. But the second the cop stepped out of the vehicle, bang, Simon's men riddled him with bullets. Then they opened fire on Levin with assault rifles. Big mistake. They didn't know the first thing about real combat. Levin took them all down, clean, efficient, with a single shot and one well-placed grenade. When the dust settled, Levin quietly laid down his M14 rifle, his way of saying the mission was over. He took Jenny by the hand and brought her home. From a distance, Simon watched them disappear. Consumed by rage and desperation, he picked up the phone and called Yuri, the top dog in the mafia hierarchy. But Yuri wasn't interested. The devil already got what he came for, he said coldly. He reminded Simon that personal grudges had no place in the organization. And if Simon tried to drag the mafia into this mess for the sake of revenge, he'd be the next to disappear. The next morning, Levin brought Jenny home, really home. Her parents, Joe and Carla, were waiting on the porch. Tears streamed down their faces as they wrapped Levin in a grateful embrace. They couldn't stop thanking him for bringing their daughter back alive. Later, Levin swung by Gunny's place to pick up Mary. The family was finally back together. They all sat down to a quiet breakfast. At the beginning of the film, we are introduced to Rambo, who is working as a laborer in a mining operation alongside other prisoners. However, not long after, his former commanding officer, Colonel Trotman, visits him. He offers to help Rambo get out of prison under one condition. Rambo must travel to Vietnam for a dangerous mission. Trotman explains that the military only trusts Rambo because he is the most knowledgeable about the terrain of Vietnam. Without hesitation, Rambo accepts the offer as he dislikes being treated like forced labor. Rambo flies to Vietnam to receive briefing at an American military outpost. There, he meets the operation leader, Marshal Murdoch. Murdoch explains that the mission is simple but dangerous. Rambo is tasked with infiltrating a jungle controlled by Vietnamese soldiers and taking photographs of American prisoners held there. Upon hearing this, Rambo is confused as to why he is being asked to take pictures rather than rescue the prisoners. However, he cannot protest because it is a direct order from headquarters.
POW target camp, here to confirm they do not engage the enemy.
Murdoch then introduces several people who will assist Rambo remotely. The area is equipped with many computers and advanced tracking devices, tools that might be unavailable to other nations. But Rambo doesn't care much about Murdoch's chatter, preferring to focus on his infiltration strategy. Murdoch feels disrespected and believes that Rambo is not suited for this mission, especially since the terrain is a living hell. But Trotman quickly shuts Murdoch down, asserting that Rambo is the right man for the job, as he has come to consider hell as his home. Rambo prepares his equipment, including a rifle, explosives, and the camera he will use to take pictures of the prisoners. He also brings his beloved knife for good luck on this mission. He is given only 36 hours, as staying too long would likely result in Rambo being discovered by the enemy. Before leaving, Rambo tells Colonel Trotman that he does not trust Murdoch and is only taking on the mission because the colonel is involved.
You're the only one I trust.
The plane reaches the jungle, and to avoid detection by the enemy, Rambo decides to parachute. Unfortunately, his parachute hook is damaged and caught on the plane, leaving him swinging in the air. Forced to drop his gear to lighten the load, he cuts the hook with his knife. Fortunately, he lands safely. But since his gear fell in an inaccessible area, Rambo is left with only his knife and a few explosives. Reluctantly, he must make do with the weapons available. After walking for several hours, he spots a suspicious woman. However, when he is about to eliminate her, he realizes she is a double agent sent by Murdoch.
Rambo!
The agent, named Ko Bao, then leads Rambo to a bandit village to hire a boat. They must cross the river to reach the enemy's base camp. After paying the boatman, they head straight to the Viet Cong camp. Along with hiring the boat, Rambo also buys some weapons from the bandits. During their long journey, Rambo and Ko Bao share their stories. Rambo asks about a necklace that Ko Bao wears, and she reveals that it is a lucky charm, similar to the knife Rambo always carries. Meanwhile, Colonel Trotman asks Murdoch to send a team to ensure Rambo is still alive. Murdoch agrees to send help, but only if Colonel Trotman joins the mission on the ground. Rambo and Co Bao finally arrive near the enemy's base camp. They observe the guards from a distance, noticing that the Viet Cong soldiers are welcoming a whore who is meant to entertain the soldiers. As night falls, Rambo quietly infiltrates the camp while Co Bao remains outside on guard. Rambo plans to rescue the prisoners, disregarding Murdoch's orders. Inside the base camp, Rambo still doesn't find any American prisoners, so he decides to go deeper into the camp. After sneaking around for some time, he climbs a cliff with a crevice, and inside the crevice, he discovers several American soldiers imprisoned in very poor conditions. They are emaciated, as if they haven't been fed for months. Worse still, they are surrounded by rats and dangerous insects. Unfortunately, Rambo cannot free them immediately as it would cause a commotion. Instead, he chooses to rescue a prisoner tied to a tree, whom we'll call Mike. Rambo carefully leads Mike out of the camp since enemy soldiers are scattered throughout the jungle. They walk through a shallow river to exit the base camp, but suddenly they hear Viet Cong soldiers approaching. Rambo quickly grabs a knife and throws it at one of the soldiers to ensure their safe escape. He kills the guards quietly, using arrows to avoid making any noise. The next day, the enemy soldiers are frantic because one of their prisoners has been freed by Rambo. They begin a search throughout the jungle. Meanwhile, Rambo, Co Bao, and Mike are heading to the pickup location as the 36-hour deadline approaches. On the other side, Colonel Trotman is already in a helicopter with Murdoch's men, waiting to pick up Rambo and his companions. Soon after, the bandits arrive to pick up the three of them, and they manage to escape. However, it turns out the Vietnamese soldiers have paid the bandits to capture Rambo and his companions. The bandits point their weapons at them, intending to return them to the military zone. Initially, Rambo remains calm, but when the bandit leader hurts Co Bao, Rambo goes berserk, eliminating all the Viet Cong soldiers on the boat. Rambo then instructs Co Bao and Mike to head towards the shore. However, at that moment, the enemy forces launch a blind attack on Rambo and his companions. Rambo grabs an RPG from the bandits and fires it at the enemy ship. After the enemy ship is destroyed, Rambo is strangled by one of the surviving bandits, but quickly pulls out his knife and kills the Viet Cong soldier, then jumps just before the ship explodes. Upon reaching the shore, Rambo leads Mike to the pickup location, while Co Bao prepares to leave as her mission is complete. Unfortunately, the Vietnamese troops spot Rambo and Mike running through the rice paddies, and they begin firing cannons at them. A rescue helicopter arrives, but Murdoch orders it to turn back upon seeing Rambo with a prisoner. According to their original agreement, Rambo was only supposed to take photos, not rescue the prisoners. Colonel Trotman wants to help Rambo, but he is threatened at gunpoint by Murdoch's men. Reluctantly, he is forced to leave Rambo behind. And unfortunately, Rambo and Mike are surrounded by Vietnamese troops. To cut a long story short, the helicopter arrives at the American military outpost. Colonel Trotman is furious with Murdoch for suddenly canceling the rescue operation. The colonel suspects that the mission was merely a formality to make the U.S. government appear concerned about the prisoners, while in reality, they are only concerned with their own interests. The colonel tells Murdoch he has made a grave mistake by enraging Rambo. Meanwhile, Rambo is submerged in a pond full of leeches, while Mike is thrown into a cage. Not long after, a helicopter and several vehicles arrive. They are Russian forces led by Colonel Sergei Podopsky. It turns out that Vietnam is cooperating with Russia to strengthen their military. Sergei orders the Vietnamese soldiers to pull Rambo out of the pond and begin beating him. They then take him to a shack for interrogation. Sergei demands that Rambo contact the American outpost and warn the government not to send any more agents or special forces like him, as they would be killed if discovered. However, Rambo refuses to cooperate.
Radio your headquarters
headquarters and say that you have been captured in the future, or they will meet with the...
That night, Ko Bao returns to the base camp, this time disguised as an escort to rescue Rambo. She silently takes out the Viet Cong soldiers one by one while searching for Rambo. Meanwhile, Rambo is being brutally tortured by Sergei and his men for refusing to speak about his mission. In his rage, Sergei shocks him with high-voltage electricity, but Rambo remains silent. Eventually, Sergei orders his men to heat Rambo's knife and burn it into his face. Still, Rambo doesn't flinch. Sergei then threatens to gouge Mike's eyes out if Rambo doesn't comply. Feeling sympathy for Mike, Rambo finally agrees to speak. Sergei instructs his men to turn on the radio so Rambo can contact the American outpost. Once connected, Sergei forces Rambo to give his location so he and his men can wipe out the American forces. However, Rambo instead warns Murdoch that he will be back to punish him. Then, Rambo suddenly stands up and savagely attacks Sergei and his men. At that moment, Ko Bao arrives to help Rambo. Together, they must now face an enemy force combining both Vietnamese and Russian soldiers. With his brilliant tactics, Rambo is able to repel all enemy gunfire. He and Ko Bao then run toward the river while evading helicopter attacks.
This way!
Eventually, they manage to escape from the Viet Cong pursuit. Rambo plans to walk to the Vietnam-Thailand border to reach the outpost and then return to America. Hearing this, Ko Bao decides to join him, but just as they are about to cross the river, they are ambushed by a large group of Viet Cong soldiers. Rambo immediately begins to massacre them, but tragically, Ko Bao's life is lost. Meanwhile, Colonel Trotman urges Murdoch to send a rescue team, but Murdoch, afraid of Rambo, refuses. Rambo is later seen giving his final respects to Ko Bao under the heavy rain. He wears the necklace she gave him as a good luck charm and vows to avenge her death using his advanced guerrilla warfare skills. Rambo re-enters the jungle and begins eliminating enemies one by one. Slowly but surely, his tactics begin to terrify the enemy. He kills them without being seen, using his environment to his advantage. When the enemy is disoriented, Rambo strikes again, using tree roots and mud for camouflage. When a Viet Cong soldier approaches, Rambo silently takes his life. Though alone, Rambo proves to be a formidable opponent, causing the Viet Cong forces to call for reinforcements to capture him. As more soldiers arrive, Rambo is forced to outsmart them. He lures them into a field of tall grass, which he had doused with gasoline, and they are killed in a fiery blaze. Additionally, Rambo shoots at their vehicles with explosive-tipped arrows. When the enemy is distracted, Rambo escapes. But while crossing the river, he is attacked by a Viet Cong soldier. Luckily, none of the enemy's shots hit him. Rambo retaliates brutally, using a bomb-tipped arrow to obliterate the soldier's body. Not long after, Murdoch's men arrive by helicopter and drop bombs on Rambo's location. They then lower the helicopter and begin firing on the river to ensure Rambo is dead. But suddenly, Rambo leaps from the water and boards the helicopter. He fights off Murdoch's men, throwing them off the helicopter. After taking control of the helicopter, Rambo uses it to attack the Viet Cong base camp, using automatic weapons to destroy all enemy positions and eliminate the remaining soldiers to free the prisoners. Rambo then lands the helicopter and releases the prisoners. However, Sergei suddenly attacks, and Mike is shot fatally. Seeing this, Rambo immediately kills Sergei. Afterward, Rambo takes the prisoners to the military outpost, but unexpectedly, Russian forces have called for reinforcements, arriving in advanced helicopters. Fortunately, Rambo maneuvers expertly to avoid enemy fire. However, after the helicopter's engine is hit, Rambo is forced to land it in the river. He pretends to be dead to avoid further attacks from the Viet Cong. When the enemy becomes complacent, Rambo springs into action and fires a rocket launcher at them. With the damaged helicopter, Rambo attempts to fly it back to the American military outpost. At the outpost, Murdoch is downcast, while Colonel Trotman eagerly awaits the return of his elite soldier. Once they arrive at the outpost, the prisoners are warmly received by the staff. After ensuring all prisoners are safe, Rambo takes weapons and ammunition and destroys all computers and documents related to the mission. Rambo enters Murdoch's office holding a knife. He is tempted to kill the Viet Cong officer, but realizes Murdoch was only following orders from his superiors. Rambo demands that Murdoch reveal the location of all the American soldiers still held captive by the Viet Cong, knowing that the enemy has many places to imprison POWs. In the final moments of the film, Rambo decides to leave the military outpost, despite Colonel Trotman's offer to rejoin the Special Forces. Rambo is offered a Medal of Honor by the government, but he chooses to follow his own path, and the film ends.
We're going home.
Thank you for clicking on this video. Today, we will summarize the story of a film titled Prey. Released in 2022, this film tells the story of a woman from a Native American tribe who struggles against an alien that lands in her forested home. Set in 1719 in North America, on a cool morning, a girl from the tribe named Naru wakes up. After rising, Naru goes about her daily activities, which include venturing into the forest to gather herbal plants. Feeling bored while observing the tree trunks, Naru ventures deeper into the woods to hone her hunting skills. Unlike other girls in her tribe, Naru has an instinct to become a hunter. Not far from her practice spot, Naru spots a deer foraging for food. She immediately chases after it, trying to catch it. However, during the pursuit, Naru's dog gets caught in a trap. Naru chooses to let the deer go and focuses on rescuing her dog. After freeing her dog from the trap, Naru treats its wounds with the herbs she has gathered. Soon after, she hears thunder in the sky and heads to the edge of the forest cliff to see something unusual in the sky. After witnessing the phenomenon, Naru talks to her brother, Tabe, by the riverbank. Tabe is a skilled hunter, and Naru aspires to be like him. She tells him about the thunder she just heard, which they refer to as Thunderbird, believing it to be a sign that she is ready to become a hunter. However, Tabe still doubts her abilities.
You really think you're ready?
Later that day, Naru returns to her camp and meets her mother, a healer in their tribe. Her mother had taught Naru how to concoct herbal medicines. At that moment, her mother asks her to find some takia flowers as their supply has run out. In the forest, a spacecraft drops an alien named Predator who possesses technology for cloaking his body. As Naru collects some takia flowers, she encounters a group of young men from her tribe searching for a friend who is presumed to have been attacked by a lion. Naru joins them in the search. Before they enter the forest further, the young men ask Naru to return home because she is just a woman, but Naru insists on staying. Tabe assures his friends that Naru will be useful as she can treat their injured friend if they find him. Meanwhile, in the forest, Predator catches a snake and skins it. Naru and the others manage to find their friend. He is alive but severely injured. Naru treats his wounds with herbal medicine and instructs him to eat the takia flower, which helps cool the blood to prevent bleeding. Tabe decides to stay in the forest to hunt the lion that injured their friend, but Naru wants to accompany him because she senses something is wrong with their friend's condition. Naru believes there is something more dangerous than the lion that is causing the lions to avoid hunting their friend. However, Tabe insists that Naru return with the others.
We don't have time to waste talking. We need to get him home.
On their way, Naru notices a skinned snake and sees footprints larger than a human's. They suspect it to be the tracks of a large bear. Naru decides to return into the forest to warn her brother, accompanied by a young man named Peña.
Peña, go with her.
Naru finds Tabe in the forest and tells him about the large footprints, but Tabe dismisses it as merely bear tracks and urges Naru to focus, reminding her that they are in lion territory. Naru suggests luring the lion out and attacking it from a tree. Tabe agrees with her idea, but feels it is also a chance for Naru to prove herself as a hunter. Naru and Peña begin to climb a tree while Tabe prepares to lure the lion out. Suddenly, Peña is attacked by the lion. After Peña is killed, the lion targets Naru, who is trapped in the tree and powerless. When Naru regains consciousness, she is back at her camp. Her mother tells her that Tabe saved her. Soon after, Tabe arrives with the dead lion. The tribe leader expresses pride in Tabe and appoints him as the tribe's war chief. Everyone cheers, but Naru still feels frightened. She tells Tabe that she believes there is a being far more dangerous than a lion in the forest. Naru intends to hunt this creature to prove herself to everyone. However, Tabe forbids her from hunting alone. He believes in Naru, but does not want her to get hurt, as he feels she is not ready to be a hunter. The next day, Naru goes about her activities as usual, but she decides to hunt secretly to prove her concerns. Along with her dog, Naru ventures into the forest. Inside, she discovers green bloodstains and the same footprints she saw earlier. At the same time, Predator is stalking a wolf. With his thermal sensor technology, Predator easily kills the wolf and takes its head. In the forest, Naru fashions a cord from tree bark and attaches it to her axe for easier retrieval. She also sharpens her skills with her new weapon. With her newfound ability, Naru successfully catches several rabbits for dinner. The next day, she continues her journey. Meanwhile, in a cave, Predator uses the wolf's skull as a trophy from Earth. Soon, Predator hears the sound of Naru's dog in the distance. Elsewhere, Naru and her dog come across many dead buffalo that have been skinned. Meanwhile, Predator finds Naru's trail. As she ventures deeper into the forest, Naru falls into a sinkhole. She tries to escape by hooking her axe onto a fallen tree root. Eventually, she manages to climb out. While cleaning her axe, Naru hears a bear. She goes to investigate and sees a bear devouring its prey. Naru intends to kill the bear with her arrow, but when she shoots, her arrow breaks, and the bear becomes aware of her presence. The bear immediately begins to chase Naru. She runs for her life and hides in a pile of wood. As the bear tries to spot her, Predator suddenly appears and kills the bear. Frightened by the sight of Predator, Naru flees and swims away across the river. Once she reaches the shore, she decides to return to the forest. On her way, she encounters some young men from her tribe who have been tasked with finding her. Naru tells them that she has just seen an invisible monster slaughtering a large bear. However, the young men do not believe her. Naru resists being taken back to camp, but they forced her to comply.
We're going home.
While resting in the forest, Naru senses that the creature is nearby. Soon, 3 laser lights shine on one of the young men, and suddenly 3 sharp projectiles pierce his body, precisely at the points of the laser beams. One young man manages to shoot at the creature. Predator reveals his true form. The young men try to fight Predator, but they are all killed. Seeing her friends slaughtered, Naru runs to save herself. In her escape, she is stopped by a young man from her tribe hiding in the grass. But with his thermal sensor technology, Predator easily locates them both. Realizing that Predator knows their position, Naru quickly grabs the young man and runs with him. Unfortunately, Predator captures and kills the young man. During her flight, Naru's leg gets caught in an animal trap, and suddenly a group of hunters appears from the forest. They capture Naru and take her away.
Non. Pour la façon qu'elle courait, je crois qu'elle a vu.
When Naru regains consciousness, she finds herself in a cage. Noticing their clothing, she realizes that these hunters are the ones who have been killing and skinning animals in her forest. One of them asks Naru about the invisible creature that has been disrupting their hunting, but she remains silent. The hunters have also captured Tabe. They tie Naru and Tabe to a tree, using them as bait to catch Predator. From a distance, the hunters watch them, but suddenly Predator appears behind them and kills them all.
Oh non, 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 qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Chien libre?
Tabe urges Naru to escape their bindings. Meanwhile, not far from Tabe and Naru, Predator begins to reveal himself and approaches them. Naru is taken by surprise when Predator is caught in a trap. It turns out there are still some hunters lying in wait nearby. The hunters manage to capture Predator, but he easily escapes and fights back. In the chaos, Naru frees herself using the nearby traps. While Predator is busy fighting the hunters, Tabe and Naru flee. Tabe intends to take the hunters' horses to escape, but Naru decides to return to the hunters' camp to rescue her dog. At the hunters' camp, Naru fights and manages to kill all the hunters present. After that, she frees her dog. Meanwhile, Predator is treating his wounds with a vaccine. In the hunters' camp, Naru also tends to her wounds with herbal remedies. Suddenly, a hunter with a severed leg pleads with Naru for help. The man asks Naru to heal his wounds in exchange for a pistol. As he is treated, the man teaches Naru how to use the pistol. Naru gives him takia flowers to cool his blood and prevent further bleeding. Instantly, the man feels cold. But soon after, something moves nearby. Naru hides, while the man pretends to be dead. It turns out Predator appears at that moment. From a distance, Naru sees that Predator cannot detect the man who has ingested the takia flower. But Predator accidentally steps on the man's leg. The man screams and Predator kills him instantly. Predator targets Naru's approaching dog, but suddenly Tabe appears from behind and strikes Predator's head, knocking off his helmet. Naru realizes that Predator's sharp metal attacks follow the laser beams from his helmet. When Predator reassembles his helmet, Naru distracts him, allowing Tabe to stab Predator. However, Predator still manages to move. When Predator disappears, Tabe instructs Naru to go home immediately. Suddenly, Predator appears and kills Tabe. That night, By the river, Naru sees the surviving leader of the hunters drawing water to drink. Naru considers shooting him, as he is responsible for her brother's death, but she changes her mind. Naru devises another plan to avenge her brother's death. She beats the man unconscious. When he regains consciousness, he is shocked to find both his legs severed. Naru intends to take revenge by using him as bait for Predator. She consumes the takia flower and prepares to confront Predator. Shortly after, Naru hears Predator's movements drawing near. Predator walks past her without noticing her presence and immediately kills the leader of the hunters. From behind, Naru shoots Predator in the head and retrieves his fallen helmet. In the forest, Naru sets various traps. When Predator approaches from above the trees, Naru leaps and tackles him. She successfully cuts off one of Predator's arms. Infuriated, Predator attacks Naru and corners her. But with her dog's help, Naru manages to bind Predator and submerge him in a quicksand pit. Unexpectedly, Predator easily resurfaces. He then attacks Naru with his sharp metal weapon, but does not realize that the laser light from his helmet is now aimed at his own head.
Palanya.
The next morning, Naru returns home carrying Predator's head. She declares that they must find a new place to live because their current home is no longer safe. Due to her bravery, the tribe leader appoints Naru as the new war chief to replace Tabe. However, shortly thereafter, 3 Predator ships arrive in the forest.
¡Muévase, muévase! ¡No, ese carro para allá! ¡Dale, dale, vamos! ¡Se tiene que parar! ¡Oh!
Run! Run!
Mason.
Quite a butt piece you got here.
Y que para atrás, y que para adelante, right?
A lawyer named Mason was looking at old photos of himself from the time when he was a member of the Special Forces. From a young age, Mason loved to fight and always tried to protect his weaker friends. As he grew older, he joined the military and was selected to be part of the Special Forces. At one point, Mason and his team were tasked with eliminating the president of Paldonia, who was considered to be extremely cruel to his people. However, during the mission, Mason's team's helicopter was shot down by a group believed to be loyal to the Paldonian president. In the incident, all of Mason's comrades were killed, but Mason survived and returned to his home country. Mason decided to leave the military and switched careers to become a lawyer, leading a normal life. After reminiscing about his past, Mason hurried to take his daughter to school. On the way, Mason's daughter mentioned that one of her schoolmates was always bothering her. Instead of giving wise advice, Mason told his daughter to beat up the bully if they bothered her again. After dropping his daughter off at school, Mason went to his office to carry out his work as usual. That day, Mason received a special visitor named Sebastian, a former military officer who used to be Mason's superior. Sebastian's visit was to offer Mason a mission. Sebastian then took Mason to his company, which operates in the Defense Initiative Services sector. There, Sebastian offered Mason a job to escort a journalist named Claire, who was going to interview the president of Paldonia, the same president suspected of killing Mason's former comrades. Sebastian specifically chose Mason because of his combat experience and promised to pay him a substantial sum. After hearing Sebastian's explanation, Mason asked for time to think and promised to inform Sebastian the next day. Afterward, Mason went to pick up his daughter from school. But when he arrived, he saw his wife was already there. It turned out that Mason's wife had been called by the school because their daughter had beaten up the bully. Their daughter also told the teachers that it was her father who had encouraged her to do it. This made Mason's wife furious because she believed Mason had taught their daughter something wrong. She asked Mason to stay away from their lives for a while. Feeling fed up with his normal life full of problems, Mason decided to accept Sebastian's mission. The next day, after accepting the mission from Sebastian, Mason immediately met Claire, the journalist. Mason told Claire that he was sent by Sebastian to escort her to meet the president of Paldonia. They then departed by plane to Paldonia to meet the president. Upon arriving at Paldonia's airport, Claire and Mason were warmly welcomed by President Venegas. Then Claire and Mason were taken to the palace for the interview. But unexpectedly, they were attacked by a group of people along the way. Mason managed to take out the attackers. He initially accused Venegas of orchestrating the attack, but Venegas swore that those people were not his men. In fact, the attackers had also tried to kill Venegas. Venegas explained that over the past few months, he had been repeatedly attacked, and he believed there was a coup attempt against him. That was why he wanted to be interviewed by Claire to get the news out to the international media. Despite Venegas' explanation, Mason was still skeptical. On the way, Mason contacted Sebastian and requested a rescue helicopter after being attacked by an unknown group. Hearing this, Sebastian asked Mason to send his coordinates, and in 20 minutes, a helicopter would arrive. However, when the helicopter appeared, it turned out not to be Mason's rescue, but rather the enemy still pursuing them. Realizing this, Mason quickly told Claire to run.
Mason.
Venegas successfully saved Mason and Claire. From that moment, Mason began to believe that the attackers were not sent by Venegas. Venegas then invited Mason and Claire to rest in a village not far from their current location. The village was Venegas' birthplace. There, they were warmly welcomed by the villagers and the village head, who was a childhood friend of Venegas. After freshening up, Claire began to interview Venegas with the limited equipment available, witnessed by the villagers. During the interview, Claire asked about the allegations of Venegas' cruelty toward his people. Venegas firmly explained that all of it was slander. This was evidenced by the villagers, who clearly loved Venegas. Venegas also explained that Poldonia was very rich in a rare material called lanthanide, which is crucial for all existing technology. Because of this, many major countries wanted to exploit this material. That is why Venegas was always portrayed as cruel to his people. They wanted to overthrow and eliminate him to exploit the lanthanide material. And of course, Venegas would not let that happen. Venegas vowed to do everything in his power to protect the rare resources for the well-being of the Poldonian people. Hearing Venegas' statement, the villagers immediately cheered in support. The next day, Mason asked Venegas about who might be behind the mercenary attacks against him. Venegas suggested that Mason should ask the person who had sent him to Poldonia directly. Mason then contacted Sebastian and asked for the real reason he was sent to Poldonia. Sebastian explained that he had intentionally sent Mason to escort Claire because he knew there would be many attacks. If Sebastian had assigned another bodyguard, Claire's safety would not have been guaranteed. Mason asked again about who was behind the attacks. Sebastian revealed that the attacks were orchestrated by the South African government, which wanted to take over Poldonia by eliminating Venegas. The South African government had even allied with Venegas' nephew, who served as vice president, to kill Venegas. Sebastian also urged Mason to kill Venegas to avenge his fallen military comrades. Hearing all this, Mason finally understood that Venegas was innocent, and he resolved to protect Venegas as well.
Take out the guy who killed our brothers. Mace, there's an easy fix here. Put a bullet in Venegas. Mace! Mace!
Sometime later, Venegas' village was attacked by a group of mercenaries led by a man named Mike. Mike had been paid by the South African government to hunt down Venegas. When he met the village chief, Mike immediately asked where Venegas was. Since the village chief refused to reveal Venegas' whereabouts, Mike began beating him. Unable to bear seeing his friend being beaten, Venegas surrendered himself to protect his friend and the villagers. As Venegas approached Mike, Mason arrived to rescue him, bringing a horse. Claire was captured, but Mason managed to get Venegas away from Mike's group. As they walked to a safe place, Venegas told Mason about a past incident in which an American military helicopter was shot down by African mercenaries in the area. Upon hearing this, Mason realized that the American helicopter that was shot down was his own unit. From this story, Mason finally understood that the group that attacked his team were African mercenaries, not Venegas men. Mason could only remain silent, feeling guilty for wrongly blaming Venegas. Venegas also planned to trade himself for Claire to resolve the situation. Venegas then took Mason to the home of his friend, Smit. There, Venegas asked Smit to help him with the exchange between himself and Claire, who was being held captive by Mike's group. Smit agreed to help Venegas gladly. The next day, Mason met with Mike's group to negotiate the exchange between Claire and Venegas. But unexpectedly, when Venegas came out of hiding, he brought many villagers with him. The villagers started throwing Molotov cocktails at Mike's group. Amid the chaos, Mason managed to get Claire away from Mike's group. Venegas also easily escaped from Mike's group. Venegas then took Claire and Mason to the presidential palace, where they met Venegas' nephew. Venegas tried to persuade his nephew to stop his betrayal, while Claire broadcasted the incident live using her phone. After Venegas successfully convinced his nephew, a general who had also betrayed Venegas entered the room. Venegas was shot, but fortunately, he was wearing a bulletproof vest. However, Venegas' nephew was also shot and gravely wounded. Venegas' nephew could not survive the gunshot wound and died in Venegas' arms. Shortly afterward, palace guards arrived and pointed their weapons at their own president. The soldiers believed that Venegas had killed the general and his own nephew. Venegas then explained everything, which convinced the soldiers to trust him again. Not long after, Mike's group also arrived at the palace. Venegas urged his soldiers to fight to defend their homeland from the traitors.
Go!
In the midst of the battle, Sebastian unexpectedly arrived with his troops to extract Claire and Mason. Outnumbered and outgunned, Sebastian's forces managed to push back Mike's group. A few days after the incident, news about the truth of Paldonia was broadcast on all national TV channels. The whole world now knew that President Venegas of Paldonia was a good man who had been slandered by greedy people wanting to exploit Paldonia's resources. Venegas also mentioned that Claire and Mason were considered heroes for helping to maintain peace in Paldonia. Mason's wife, watching the news at home, felt very proud of Mason. The next day, Mason returned home and was warmly welcomed by his wife and daughter. Sometime later, Mason received good news from Sebastian. Mason then went to an ATM to check his account balance, and to his surprise, Sebastian had transferred Mason's $5 million payment. From that moment, Mason felt that his life would now be amazing and meaningful.
Johnson! Oh.
Идите со мной. Идите.
Уводи отсюда своих детей. Нам нужно уходить отсюда.
Заткнись.
Нужно убираться.
Thank you for clicking on this video. Today, we will discuss a film titled Tunnel Rats, released in 2008. The movie portrays one of the legendary war strategies employed by the Viet Cong, an underground network of tunnels. These tunnels, built across various locations, were used to launch surprise attacks on American troops stationed in Vietnam's dense jungles. The story begins with an American soldier stealthily navigating one of these underground tunnels. After reporting the discovery of the tunnel to his base, the soldier is ambushed and killed by a Viet Cong fighter hidden within the tunnel. Shortly after receiving this report, U.S. headquarters dispatches a unit to southern Vietnam to investigate and neutralize the tunnels. This specialized group, known as the Tunnel Rats, is tasked with destroying the Viet Cong's underground network. Upon arriving at their camp, the Tunnel Rat unit is greeted by Lieutenant Holliard, their commanding officer. Lieutenant Holliard informs them that the next day they will be deployed to a newly discovered tunnel.
Туннель с проблемами к сержанту Хине. Или ко мне. Это моя койка. Первый туннель завтра? Черт.
Following their welcome, Lieutenant Holly orders Sergeant Mike to execute a Viet Cong sniper responsible for killing 5 of his men. The execution is carried out publicly, in full view of the other American soldiers at the camp. After ensuring the sniper is dead, an enraged Lieutenant Holly demands that Sergeant Mike decapitate the body, a gruesome act that many soldiers avoid witnessing. One of the soldiers, Harris, openly protests Lieutenant Holly's brutal actions, calling them inhumane. In response, Lieutenant Holly challenges Harris to a duel, implying that if Harris disapproves, he should fight to prove his point. During the fight, Lieutenant Holly justifies his actions by explaining that survival is their ultimate priority. He argues that the Viet Cong are merciless and would kill any American soldier without hesitation, including Harris. Disturbed by the confrontation and Holly's words, Harris spends the night reflecting deeply. The following day, the Tunnel Rat Unit begins its mission, cautiously advancing into the dense Vietnamese jungle. Unbeknownst to them, 2 Viet Cong soldiers are shadowing their movements from a distance. After some time, the unit, led by Lieutenant Holly, arrives at an entry point to a tunnel. The opening is small and well hidden, nearly undetectable. Lieutenant Holly orders 3 soldiers, Garati, Johnson, and Portison, to enter the tunnel while the others stand guard. Garati goes in first, but is soon shot by a Viet Cong soldier inside. Hearing the gunfire, Johnson quickly enters the tunnel to retrieve Garati. Johnson manages to pull Garati out, but Garati, critically wounded with a gunshot to his stomach, succumbs to his injuries in front of his comrades. With Garati dead, Lieutenant Holly and 3 other soldiers return to camp to handle his remains.
Давай, вали оттуда. Ну давай. Дай гранаты. Да, сэр. Взрывай. Портисон, готов? Пусть соберут как можно больше данных.
Before leaving the site, they throw grenades and release toxic gas into the tunnel to eliminate any remaining Viet Cong soldiers. Portison and Johnson then re-enter the tunnel to confirm the kills. They find several dead Viet Cong fighters before proceeding further into the tunnel, carrying essential equipment. As they advance, Johnson and Portison encounter a booby trap but successfully disarm it. They press on, venturing deeper into the tunnel. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, a group of Viet Cong soldiers below their position is strategizing an attack. Johnson and Portison discover another exit hole and decide to investigate the surrounding area. As Johnson climbs out, he is ambushed and killed by a female Viet Cong fighter named Foreman, who was entering the tunnel from another access point.
Johnson!
Realizing something has gone wrong, Sergeant Mike takes the initiative to investigate. Meanwhile, Foreman, now hiding inside the tunnel, vomits after killing Johnson and witnessing the blood gushing from his neck. Foreman's actions reveal her internal struggle. Though repulsed by violence, she feels compelled to fulfill her duties as a Viet Cong soldier. After searching around the tunnel's exterior, Sergeant Mike and the other soldiers discovered Johnson's lifeless body in a horrifying state. Concluding that Johnson was dead, they decided to return to their initial position to inform their comrades that Portison was likely dead as well. However, unbeknownst to them, Portison was still alive inside the tunnel. The soldiers above attempted to contact Lieutenant Holly at the camp to report the situation, but their communication radio had malfunctioned.
Она сдохла. Капрал, ты останешься здесь. Я иду внутрь. Я с вами, сержант.
Unable to reach Lieutenant Holly, Sergeant Mike, Corporal Green, and a soldier named Murano decided to venture into the tunnel themselves to recover Portison's body, assuming he had been killed. Moving cautiously, they proceeded into the tunnel, but tragedy struck when Sergeant Mike was impaled by a bamboo spike trap and died instantly. Morano, who was right behind him, was devastated to witness Sergeant Mike's sudden death. Moments later, Morano was gunned down by a Viet Cong soldier stationed outside the tunnel. Harris and Ledford grew suspicious that something had gone wrong with Sergeant Mike, Morano, and Corporal Green as they had been gone for too long. Shortly after, the two were ambushed by Viet Cong soldiers firing from the cover of the trees. With no place to take cover, Harris and Ledford had no choice but to enter the tunnel. Meanwhile, the Viet Cong launched a surprise attack on the American camp situated above the tunnels. Inside the tunnel, Harris encountered Corporal Green, who was alive but shaken. Harris informed Green about the ambush they had faced and that Ledford had been shot. He also inquired about Sergeant Mike and Morano. From Corporal Green's expression, Harris realized they had both been killed. After tending to Ledford's wound, Harris and Green resumed crawling through the tunnel, searching for an escape route. Unbeknownst to them, Phomai, the female Viet Cong soldier, was silently trailing them. Positioned at the back, Ledford became an easy target for Phomai. Elsewhere in the tunnel, Portison continued to crawl, desperately seeking an exit. Corporal Green, overcome with despair, admitted to Harris that he had given up hope and refused to continue. Despite Harris' attempts to encourage him, Green pointed his pistol at Harris, demanding to be left alone. Reluctantly, Harris moved on, leaving Green behind. At the American camp, the soldiers were overwhelmed by the surprise attack from the Viet Cong. Even Lieutenant Holly was critically injured by gunfire. Using his remaining strength, Holly contacted headquarters to request an airstrike. Back in the tunnel, Corporal Green was ambushed by two Viet Cong soldiers. However, he managed to kill both of them in a desperate struggle. Unfortunately, their bodies pinned him in place, leaving him unable to move. With no other choice, Green mutilated the Viet Cong corpses to free himself. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Holly, gravely wounded and unwilling to be captured, chose to detonate a grenade, killing himself in the process. Corporal Green, having freed himself, encountered a dead end in the tunnel. Suddenly, Viet Cong soldiers surrounded him, blocking any escape. In a desperate attempt to escape, Green pried open a wooden barrier, only to unleash a torrent of water that flooded the tunnel. Trapped with no way out, Green drowned. Portison, however, successfully emerged from the tunnel and made his way back to the camp. There, he met his comrade, Miller. Both were shocked to find the camp destroyed. Inside the tunnel, Harris stumbled upon a room where Phomai and her two children were hiding. Tension rose as Phomai assumed Harris intended to harm her and her children. After Harris explained that he only wanted to pass through and leave the tunnel, the situation calmed. Shortly after, American planes began an airstrike, targeting the camp and inadvertently destroying the tunnels below.
Нам нужно уходить отсюда.
Заткнись.
Нужно убираться.
The collapse buried Fome's two children under rubble. Harris and Fome frantically dug through the debris, hoping to rescue them, but their efforts were in vain. Exhausted and trapped within the ruined tunnel system, Harris and Fome resigned themselves to their fate. One notable aspect of this film is its portrayal of the futility of war. In the end, neither side emerged victorious. Perhaps because the film was directed by a German filmmaker, there was no obligation to depict an American victory. The director may have also avoided explicitly emphasizing the American defeat. Ultimately, the narrative declared both sides as having lost. That's all for now, viewers. I hope you enjoyed this summary. See you in the next video.
Jules!
Archie, come on!
Do that. You just...
This time, POV Movie will recount the story of a film titled The Tank, released in 2023. The film tells the story of a small family who inherits a coastal house from their deceased parents. The inherited house, untouched for decades, has a slightly eerie aura but offers a stunning scenic atmosphere. However, there's something even more surprising and dangerous hidden within. In May 1946 on the Oregon coast, a mother and her child are sleeping soundly amidst a stormy night, while the father goes to the basement to inspect the water tank in their backyard. As he tries to exit the tank, something pulls him back in. "30 years later, in 1978, a California couple who own a pet store struggle to balance taking care of their child, Rhea, and managing the animals they sell. Jules, the wife, suggests Ben, her husband, hire a nanny for their child, but finances are tight. One evening, after they've closed the shop, an elderly man named Amos visits. He brings news of Ben's mother, who recently passed away, along with documents retrieved from a lawyer. Among them is a deed for property on the Oregon coast that Ben had no knowledge of. It turns out that in 1935, before Ben's father died, he had purchased a plot of land near a small village on the Oregon coast named Hobbit Bay. With the deed in hand, Ben is now the legal owner of his parents' estate.
In all my life, she never once mentioned this.
Before leaving, Amos asks Ben if he knows what happened to his father. Ben only knows what his mother told him. His father and older brother died in a car accident before he was born. But Amos points out that records show they drowned, not died in a car crash. Jules explains that after losing her husband and son, Ben's mother was admitted to a psychiatric hospital and was rarely home. Amos is left puzzled but simply wants Ben to understand that the family estate now belongs to him.
Well, according to this, I was suing at Hobbit legally. The property's yours to do with as you wish.
What do you want to do?
Ben and his family travel to the inherited house. Since there's no road access, they park on the forest's edge and walk in. The house is daunting, yet from within its walls, they can see breathtaking views of the coastal landscape.
It's incredible.
In the backyard, Ben finds an underground water tank. Driven by curiosity, he enters the tank, hoping to find a water source. Inside, it's pitch dark, and he finds only an old oil lamp. Back in the house, Jules and Rhea explore Ben's parents' room. Rhea finds a photo of Ben's mother and brother, and Jules notices the window has been nailed shut. Ben assumes this was to prevent break-ins.
Well, I saw a very special room downstairs. Should we go check it out?
That evening, Jules gives Ben a collection of newspaper clippings she found in his parents' room. The articles confirm Amos' account. Ben's father and brother drowned near the house, and their bodies were never recovered. Jules also finds Ben's mother's diary, detailing their early days in the house. Initially, they loved it there, but after the water tank was built, Ben's mother began feeling uneasy. Some even reported strange occurrences to the local paper. Ben's father went missing after a storm, and his mother searched the coast for days but never found him. Despite reporting his disappearance to the police, they assured her he'd return. Later, Ben's brother vanished too. These were her last entries. Ben is perplexed as to why his mother kept the truth about his father and brother's fates from him.
I don't know why she did what she did or what even really happened, but...
One night, they are startled by a noise. Terrified, Rhea runs to her mother, saying something is trying to get into the house. Jules, alarmed, asks Ben to investigate. They split up to look around Jules outside, Ben on the other side of the house.
Shit. Don't do that. You just...
The next day, Jules finds Ben fixing the water pump connected to the tank. When the pump fails, he re-enters the tank to inspect it. Inside, he finds a spring source and, deeper down, a cave hidden behind the tank wall. To his surprise, he also discovers an unusual amphibian-like creature without eyes. Jules and Ben assume it's a water-dwelling creature that somehow found its way in. Outside, Rhea senses her father's presence near the tank, but instead encounters something horrifying. Hearing her scream, Jules and Ben rush to her, and Rhea tells them what she saw. Soon after, a realtor named Mariel, sent by Amos, arrives to discuss selling the house. Mariel explains that the house was originally a whaling lodge with an unknown ownership history before Ben's father bought it. The locals considered it cursed, tied to an earthquake that once struck and opened the ground, making people disappear. Mariel tells them there's a high offer on the property, and as night falls, she leaves. On her way out, her car gets stuck. When she steps out to investigate, an unexpected incident occurs. Later, Jules, awakened by a noise, checks the window and catches a glimpse of a creature. Startled, she screams. When Ben checks, he finds nothing and assumes she saw a raccoon. The incident leaves Jules terrified and determined to leave the house as soon as possible. The following day, as Ben is about to drink from the tap, he notices that the water has turned black and foul-smelling. Forced to inspect the tank again, Ben enters it and finds something lodged in the water pipe. Nearby, he also discovers a raccoon carcass floating in the water. He shows the carcass to Jules, believing it to be the source of the noise that's been disturbing them. But beyond that, Ben also finds a necklace. When Jules compares it to a photo of Ben's late brother, they realize the necklace belonged to him. Jules then urges Ben to contact the police to investigate the tank, but first, he needs to go buy gasoline to restart the water pump. On the way, Ben spots Mariel's car and senses something is wrong. Investigating the area around the car, he finds Mariel's half-decomposed body a short distance away. Horrified, Ben radios the police from his vehicle. Meanwhile, Jules notices wet footprints inside the house. She follows them to a locked room and searches for the key. After unlocking the room, she finds nothing unusual but does uncover missing pages from Ben's mother's diary. As Jules reads them, the door suddenly locks behind her.
Jules!
She begs Ben to take them away from the house, convinced that something terrifying lurks there. However, Ben asks her to wait, as he's already called the police to report Mariel's remains. At this moment, Jules shares with Ben the reason his mother lied to him. From the diary pages, Jules learns that something in the house led to his father and brother's deaths. Ben's mother didn't want him to know about the place because of the dangers it held. Just as they are about to leave, they hear a police car arrive. To their surprise, only a local sheriff has been dispatched. But moments after his arrival, the sheriff is attacked by a horrifying creature. Returning to the house, Ben tells Jules what he saw, though he isn't certain what kind of creature attacked the sheriff. He only knows that, like the creature he found in the water tank, this one also had no eyes. Jules believes that their disturbance of the tank must have provoked the creature, which is now hunting them. Realizing this, Ben decides to make a homemade bomb from fertilizer to destroy the creature's lair in the tank.
It's highly explosive. I can rig a fuse.
You come back, okay? You come back.
Once the bomb is ready, Ben enters the tank alone. Inside, he finds the sheriff's half-eaten body. Meanwhile, Jules and Rhea watch from the bedroom window, observing the tank's opening. When Ben reaches the cave, thought to be the creature's lair, his flashlight suddenly fails, and he resorts to lighting a match to see. He ignites the bomb and hurries out, but as it detonates, the creature attacks him. Jules tells Rhea to stay in the bedroom while she attempts to help Ben. However, before she can reach him, the creature begins battering the door from outside. As Jules tries to hold it off, another creature slips through the window and abducts Rhea. Severely injured, Ben climbs out of the tank only to watch helplessly as the creature drags Rhea away. He informs Jules that the creature took Rhea into the tank. Determined, Jules prepares makeshift weapons to weaken the creature and rescue her daughter. In the tank, Jules hears Rhea's screams, confirming that she's still alive. As she ventures deeper, two creatures block her path. Armed with only what she could carry, Jules fiercely fights them off, driven by her resolve to save her child. Eventually, she kills both creatures and enters the cave to find Rhea safe. Jules urges Rhea to escape first, planning to burn the creature's lair. Jules' attempt to burn the creatures is unsuccessful. She decides to get Rhea out of the tank and instructs her and the family dog to hide in the car while she goes back for Ben. Shortly after she leaves, one of the creatures approaches the car, terrifying Rhea. But fortunately, her parents arrive just in time.
Archie, come on!
15 years later, workers reopen the water tank, clearing a path they have mapped out. So what did you think of the movie? Exciting, isn't it? While the story is simple, it's quite engaging. However, it's a bit disappointing that the origin of the creatures in the tank remains a mystery. Nonetheless, I enjoyed watching it, and I highly recommend you check out the full film. That's all for now. Hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next video. Thank you for clicking on this video. Today, we will summarize the 1998 film The Thin Red Line. This movie tells the story of a battle for control over an island during World War II. The American forces stationed on Guadalcanal suffered a defeat against the Japanese army. This loss caused concern in the U.S. military, as the island was a strategic stronghold in the war. In response, the U.S. military deployed additional troops via naval routes to reclaim Guadalcanal, making this mission deeply significant for each soldier involved. How does the story unfold? Let's find out together. On a beautiful island in the South Pacific, the local inhabitants lived simple yet joyful lives. Among them were two American soldiers, Whit and Hawk, who had gone AWOL from their assigned duties, choosing instead to immerse themselves in the island's tranquility. During his time there, Whit recalled the moments leading up to his mother's passing, remembering how she passed away peacefully. He wished for his own death to be just as serene. A few weeks later, a U.S. patrol ship, having learned of their desertion, arrived to retrieve them. Both soldiers were taken back aboard to face the consequences of their actions. On the ship, Whit was interrogated by his friend Welsh, who had since been promoted to sergeant. Welsh told Whit that in the 6 years he had served, he had not changed. He remained undisciplined and often ignored orders from his superiors. Welsh informed Whit that he was facing a court-martial but offered him an alternative to avoid punishment. The deal was for Whit to be reassigned to a disciplinary unit as a stretcher bearer responsible for aiding wounded soldiers, though he would not be permitted to carry a weapon. With no other choice, Whit reluctantly accepted the offer. Meanwhile, on the ship's deck, General Quintard discussed their upcoming offensive with Lieutenant Colonel Tall, aiming to seize control of a crucial island in the South Pacific from Japanese forces. Quintard emphasized the importance of securing the airfield on the island and eliminating all Japanese resistance. The island was a key strategic point that would allow U.S. forces to monitor the surrounding area and was vital to the Pacific theater. Colonel Tall, who had long been passed over for promotion in favor of younger officers, saw this as his chance to prove himself. Determined to succeed, he was willing to do whatever it took to achieve victory. The soldiers aboard the ship were unaware that they would soon be deployed into battle. Most of them had been drafted and were apprehensive about what awaited them once they landed. Among them was Captain Staros, the leader of Charlie Company, who had to command a group of mostly young and inexperienced soldiers. One of these soldiers was Private Jack Bell, who deeply missed his wife back home. Jack had previously held a high-ranking position in the military's engineering division, but left to spend more time with his wife. However, when World War II broke out, all able-bodied men were required to enlist, forcing Jack into the infantry. As they neared their destination, the soldiers prepared to board landing craft for the shore. Upon arrival, they advanced inland through dense jungle and tall grass. When they reached a sugarcane field, they discovered the corpses of American soldiers who had been stationed there before them. After a grueling march, they finally reached their camp, where chaos awaited. Many American soldiers were wounded from previous battles. Witnessing this, Witt immediately began his duties as a medic, tending to the injured. That evening, Colonel Tall ordered Captain Staros and the unit leaders to scout enemy positions, believing that Japanese forces had fortified the nearby hills. He insisted that the only way to take the area was through a direct surprise assault. Captain Staros and his men began their reconnaissance, planning a coordinated attack with one platoon held in reserve. That night, Captain Staros prayed to God, asking for protection for himself and his men in the upcoming battle. At dawn, the U.S. forces launched a frontal assault on the Japanese-held hills. Artillery barrages were fired first to disrupt enemy defenses and clear the way for the advancing infantry. Once the bombardment ceased, the American troops moved forward in a direct attack, with one platoon remaining at the rear. They were immediately met with heavy mortar fire and relentless machine gun rounds from the Japanese forces. Many American soldiers were wounded or killed, and they struggled to determine where the enemy fire was coming from. Captain Staros quickly ordered the stretcher bearers to evacuate the wounded. Witt requested permission to carry a weapon after escorting the wounded back to the battalion, and Captain Staros granted his request. Meanwhile, Sergeant Keck's squad, positioned on the battlefield, was unexpectedly approached by several Japanese soldiers. As Sergeant Keck prepared to throw a grenade, he accidentally triggered the fuse too early. To protect his fellow soldiers from the blast, he used his body to shield them. As a result, he sustained critical injuries and ultimately succumbed to his wounds. The intensity of the battle led to significant American casualties. None of the surviving soldiers dared to advance to assist their fallen comrades, fearing the relentless enemy fire. However, Sergeant Welsh bravely sprinted through the hail of bullets to aid a wounded soldier lying in the open. When he assessed the soldier's injuries, he realized they were too severe for evacuation. With no other option, he was forced to leave the soldier behind on the battlefield. Colonel Tall continued pressuring Captain Staros to advance and seize the hill before nightfall. He showed little regard for the high number of casualties, focusing solely on securing the strategic position. However, Captain Staros refused to obey the order, arguing that Japanese troops were well fortified in bunkers and that their exact positions remained unclear. He requested permission to send a reconnaissance patrol to the right flank of the hill to gather intelligence. Colonel Tall, unmoved by this, insisted that Captain Staros push forward immediately. Captain Staros warned that such a maneuver would result in devastating losses, but his defiance enraged Colonel Tall. During a brief lull in the fighting, Colonel Tall visited Captain Staros to assess the situation firsthand. However, what he saw did not match Captain Staros' description. Instead of a chaotic battlefield, he found Staros and his men appearing inactive. Frustrated, Colonel Tall once again ordered an immediate assault. Yet, Captain Staros stood his ground, informing Colonel Tall that he had already dispatched the 1st Platoon to the hill's rear for reconnaissance. The reconnaissance unit was led by Jack Bell. Jack and his team successfully located a Japanese bunker equipped with 5 machine guns. They returned to the battalion and relayed this information to Colonel Tall. Based on their findings, Colonel Tall formed an assault team of 7 soldiers, led by Sergeant John, tasked with destroying the Japanese bunker. The assault team swiftly moved toward the hill. As they neared the bunker, Sergeant John provided its coordinates and requested an artillery strike. Just as the team was preparing to advance, Japanese forces suddenly opened fire with machine guns, killing one soldier. The relentless gunfire pinned the assault team down. One soldier bravely charged forward through the hail of bullets and threw a grenade at the bunker, allowing the others to retreat and take cover. They then split up and launched a coordinated attack from multiple angles. Some Japanese soldiers emerged from the bunker in an attempt to neutralize the team, but ultimately, the assault team succeeded in capturing the bunker. Sergeant John blew a long whistle to signal their victory. Colonel Tall approached him and congratulated the team for successfully driving the Japanese troops from the hill. In recognition of their achievement, Colonel Tall promised John something greater than just a commendation. He then ordered John and his men to continue pushing the remaining Japanese forces hiding in the jungle to maintain their momentum. John, however, expressed his concerns, stating that his men were dehydrated and had run out of water supplies. Additionally, they were exhausted. Though visibly frustrated, Colonel Tall reluctantly agreed to allow the troops a brief rest. After recuperating, the soldiers prepared for an assault on the Japanese forces' final stronghold in the jungle. They moved cautiously into the dense forest, where, amidst the fog, Japanese troops suddenly ambushed them. A brutal close-quarters battle ensued. The American forces fought fiercely, and in the end, they forced the Japanese troops to surrender. Following the battle, Colonel Tall relieved Captain Starros of his command, replacing him with Lieutenant Band. Starros was ordered to return to the United States along with the wounded soldiers. Colonel Tall deemed Starros too soft as a leader, a quality he disapproved of. Starros, in turn, told Tall that he had disobeyed previous orders because he refused to send his men to their deaths for no reason. However, Colonel Tall, blinded by ambition and eager for promotion, dismissed Starros' reasoning. In light of their victory at Guadalcanal, all soldiers who fought on the island were granted a week-long leave. A reserve battalion was brought in to replace them. The troops were transported back to the island's airbase to enjoy their time off duty. Some soldiers, knowing that Captain Starros was being sent home, expressed their gratitude. They acknowledged that, in his own way, Starros had protected them from unnecessary deaths. Starros simply replied that he had always considered his men like his own children. Meanwhile, Jack Bell's longing for his wife in America grew stronger. He frequently reminisced about their time together and confided in a fellow soldier, Whit, that he deeply loved her. Since being deployed, he had never spoken to or touched another woman. However, his world shattered when he received a letter from his wife. In it, she revealed that she had fallen in love with another man, someone who could always be by her side, and wanted a divorce. There was nothing Jack could do. He could only smile. A week later, Charlie Company was deployed again to sweep the jungle for any remaining Japanese forces. As they reached the riverbank, they came under a sudden mortar attack. Unlike Captain Starros, who had been decisive in battle, Lieutenant Band was paralyzed by indecision. Jack suggested they retreat to headquarters and report the situation, but Band instead ordered Whit and Kahn to locate the enemy position. Whit then requested permission to accompany them, which Band granted. As the three of them navigated the river and ventured deeper into the jungle, they spotted an entire battalion of Japanese troops moving toward them. Realizing the danger, they attempted to retreat, but the enemy quickly opened fire, hitting Kahn. The three managed to hide but were unable to take further action. Whit decided to sacrifice himself to distract the enemy, allowing Kahn to float down the river, where American forces upstream could rescue him. As Whit lured the Japanese away, Kahn let himself drift into the current. Whit managed to return to the battalion and report the enemy's strength, but he was soon surrounded by Japanese troops. In the end, he met his fate, unable to die peacefully, just as his mother had. American forces later found Whit's body and buried him by the river. His close friend, Sergeant Welsh, was devastated by his loss. Due to Lieutenant Band's poor leadership during the reconnaissance mission, he was relieved of command and replaced by another officer. However, to the soldiers, all officers were the same. They only cared about power, not the lives of their men. Following the battle for Guadalcanal, the soldiers looked upon the graves of their fallen comrades, those who had died fighting for control of the island. They then boarded ships and departed, leaving behind the land that had claimed so many lives. Every military campaign targets a nation's strategic points. Sometimes, wars are fought over territory that will later serve a greater purpose, without regard for the lives of the soldiers involved. This is the stark reality depicted in this film. That concludes our review. We hope this film provides valuable lessons for all of us. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.
攻撃開始。
Namun
西の連隊に合流しろ。洞窟での戦はもうたくさんだ。戦車の下に潜り込んで。いい加減にしてくれよ。行くぞ。
Thank you for clicking on this video. This time, POV Movie will recount the story of the film Letters from Iwo Jima. Released in 2006, the film is based on a true story from the perspective of Japanese soldiers. It tells the tale of the battle between Japan and the United States on Iwo Jima during World War II. Japanese officer General Kurabayashi was given command to organize the forces on Iwo Jima. However, unlike most rigid generals, Kurabayashi took a different approach with unique strategies for his soldiers. Still, there were some who disagreed with General Kurabayashi. The story begins with a group of Japanese archaeologists exploring a tunnel on Iwo Jima in 2005. They discover something buried in the ground and begin excavating. The scene then flashes back to 1944, several months before the battle on Iwo Jima. Under the command of Admiral Asugi, Japanese soldiers are ordered to dig trenches along the coastline to build a defense line in preparation for the American forces, who were expected to land after their assault on Saipan. General Kurabayashi and his aide, Lieutenant Fuji, have just arrived on Iwo Jima. They are greeted by Admiral Asugi and several other officers. General Kurabayashi asks Admiral Asugi to accompany him on a walk around the island. During this walk, General Kurabayashi observes soldiers digging trenches on the coast, but orders them to stop and rest. Later that evening, as General Kurabayashi examines a map of the island, the lieutenant reports that Japan's air force is severely depleted, with only a few units left. They lost many aircraft while supporting the Japanese forces on Saipan. Hearing this, General Kurabayashi instructs Lieutenant Neto to coordinate with the remaining army forces to focus on defense in the Suribachi area.
速やかに陸軍と連携を取りなさい。まず、すり鉢山の防御が第一です。
General Kurabayashi, who is responsible for the strategy on the island, continues to patrol Iwo Jima, predicting potential movements of the American forces. During one of his rounds, he meets Colonel Nishi, a former horse racing athlete who had won an Olympic championship. In the U.S., General Kurabayashi invites Colonel Nishi to dinner, and they talk.
今晩飯でもどうだ。久しぶりに飲みたくなった。任せてください。
That night, Colonel Nishi visits General Kurabayashi for dinner and brings bad news. Most of the combined fleet, including supply ships, has been destroyed by the Americans during the Battle of the Mariana Islands. Colonel Nishi candidly suggests that the best course of action would be to sink Iwo Jima, as Japan no longer has a chance of winning the battle there.
正直に申し上げてもよろしいですか、閣下。海の底に沈めてしまうことだと思います。最も賢明な措置は。
However, General Kurabayashi refuses to give up. He reorganizes the strategy and decides to build underground defenses on higher ground. He orders the officers to dig caves in the Motoyama, Higashiyama, and Suribachi areas. The general intends to focus their forces on underground defense, but his officers are skeptical, arguing that without defenses along the coast, the enemy forces could easily land on the island. They believe digging tunnels is a waste of time and effort, especially since American forces will soon arrive. Nonetheless, General Kurabayashi stresses that the fate of Iwo Jima rests on the soldiers who are already there, as the combined fleet has been completely defeated by the Americans in the Mariana Islands, and the remaining Air Force has been ordered to defend Tokyo.
もはやこの島は孤立したも同然だ。あ、議論の余地はありませんね。戻った方が良さそうだ。
The soldiers are ordered to begin digging tunnels. During a break for a meal, one of the soldiers, Seigo, tells his fellow soldiers about his past. Before joining the Japanese forces on Iwo Jima, Seigo was a baker. However, due to the war, civilian men of a certain age were conscripted into military service. Seigo had to leave his pregnant wife behind to fight. Days pass and the tunnels are completed. The commander then gathers the soldiers and briefs them on the strategy to face the American forces. He explains that they will be at a disadvantage in every aspect against the Americans, both in terms of weaponry and numbers. Therefore, they are ordered to focus on attacking the American medical teams, as this is the only weakness the Americans have. American soldiers will sacrifice themselves to protect their medical teams.
敵の衛星兵の制服だ。奴らは衛星兵を守るためだな。多少の犠牲はいとわんのだ。
As General Kurabayashi is busy organizing the strategy, Colonel Nishi warns him to be cautious of a major named Hayashi. Before he can finish, Admiral Ichimaru arrives to report for duty, replacing Admiral Osugi, who is ill. Suddenly, the sound of an air raid siren is heard, signaling an attack. Several American fighter planes launch a surprise attack, devastating the Japanese headquarters on Iwo Jima. After the attack, the Japanese soldiers take shelter in the newly dug caves. Soon after, General Kurabayashi receives word that the American forces have captured Saipan and will soon arrive at Iwo Jima. The general gathers all the soldiers and orders them to prepare for battle until the last man. The officers are seen writing farewell letters to their families, even though they know the letters will never reach them. Ultimately, thousands of Japanese soldiers are ready on Iwo Jima. The soldiers take their positions, but General Kurabayashi orders them to hold back their attack until the American forces have fully landed. Once the Americans are on the island, the Japanese launch a surprise attack. The ambush proves effective, killing around 1,000 American soldiers on the beach, and the soldiers positioned at Suribachi managed to kill 20,000 American troops and destroy 80 American tanks.
敵の死者は1000人以上と推定。他の部隊は全て損害ありません。すり鉢はどうだ持ちこたえているか。敵兵力はおよそ2万名。戦死者は80台と推定されます。
However, due to the overwhelming number of American forces, the Japanese soldiers in the Suribachi area were ultimately overwhelmed and defeated by the Americans. Colonel Adaki reported to General Kurabayashi that the Suribachi area could no longer be defended. He then requested permission from the general to die honorably through harakiri. However, the general refused his request and ordered the remaining soldiers under Colonel Adaki to join the forces in the northern cave. Despite this, Colonel Adaki ignored the order and chose to carry out harakiri. Seigo, who was present, was ordered by Colonel Adaki to deliver an official letter to their commander. In the letter, Colonel Adaki commanded that the remaining officers and soldiers also commit harakiri in order to die honorably. The remaining soldiers followed Colonel Adaki's order and performed harakiri, believing it to be the only honorable way to die. However, Seigo convinced one of the soldiers named Shimizu, who had not yet committed harakiri, that he had heard from General Kurabayashi over the radio, instructing them to join the forces in the northern cave. Since they were not yet willing to die, the two of them decided to head to the northern cave. Not only they, but all the surviving Japanese soldiers would also make their way to the cave. However, their journey was not as easy as they had hoped. They had to cross an open area where the American forces were waiting, and they immediately opened fire. Fortunately, Seiko and Shimizu survived the gunfire by crawling along the ground, although it took them a long time to reach the northern cave. Upon arriving, the lieutenant in charge there was furious to see the soldiers from Suribachi, who were supposed to hold that area, had fled. When the lieutenant was about to kill them for being cowards and traitors, General Kurabayashi appeared and explained that it was he who had ordered the remaining soldiers to retreat to the northern cave. Soon after, the soldiers were ordered by the lieutenant to join an assault to retake the Suribachi area, following orders from Major Hayashi. However, General Kurabayashi had specifically commanded that the soldiers remain in the cave. Lieutenant Ito and Major Hayashi believed that General Kurabayashi was a weak sympathizer of the Americans. As they were about to attack, Colonel Mishi arrived and told the lieutenant not to oppose General Kurabayashi's orders. Upon hearing this, Lieutenant Ito decided to retake Suribachi alone and told his soldiers that they were now under Colonel Mishi's command. At the Higashiyama Defense Cave, Admiral Ichimaru reported to General Kurabayashi that 1,000 of their soldiers had been killed during the assault on the Chidori airfield. However, General Hayashi refused General Kurabayashi's order to retreat. Additionally, the headquarters sent word that they could no longer send reinforcements to Iwo Jima, urging the troops there to continue fighting and die honorably for their country.
最後まで完闘し。
At Colonel Nishi's location, they managed to capture an injured American soldier. The Japanese soldiers wanted to kill him, but Colonel Nishi ordered them to treat him instead. After the American soldier regained consciousness, Colonel Nishi spoke with him. Initially, the American soldier refused to talk, but after Colonel Nishi revealed that he had lived in America and was an Olympic athlete there, they introduced themselves to each other.
Me and my horse, champion. That the guys? No kidding. Takeichi. Sam.
That night, General Kurabayashi was sketching in remembrance of his past meeting with American officers. During that meeting, General Kurabayashi had been given a gift, a pistol, as a symbol of friendship from the American officers.
Please accept as a token of our friendship something every cavalry officer could use. This 1911 Colt 45.
The next day, Colonel Nishi discovered that the American soldier he had treated had died from blood loss. He found a letter from the soldier's mother expressing her hope that her son would return home safely. Colonel Nishi read the letter, and the Japanese soldiers listening realized that their fates were essentially the same. They were all fighting for their countries and families. But suddenly, their cave was bombed by American forces, resulting in Colonel Nishi being blinded by injuries. He realized he could no longer lead his troops. Colonel Nishi asked his subordinate, Okubo, to take command of the remaining soldiers and ordered them to join the forces at Higashiyama, while he would commit harakiri in the cave. Now, they were truly on the brink of defeat. Food and water supplies had run out, and the only remaining defense cave was at Higashiyama. General Kurabayashi knew they could not win, but he was determined to lead one final assault. Before doing so, he wrote farewell letters for his family and took precautions to ensure that important documents would not fall into enemy hands. Seiko was ordered to stay behind and burn everything, but he did not. Instead, he buried one of the boxes containing letters to the citizens, the soldiers, and even personal letters from General Kurabayashi. Seigo hoped that someone would find these letters, serving as proof of the Japanese soldiers' desperate struggle to defend Iwo Jima. At the same time, General Kurabayashi and the remaining soldiers launched their final assault. However, due to their numerical and weapons disadvantage, they were inevitably defeated. Seigo also survived and witnessed the general, who was wounded, approaching him. Feeling he had failed in his duty, General Kurabayashi decided to bury his body in a place where it would never be found. Ultimately, General Kurabayashi ended his life by shooting himself with the pistol, a gift from the American officers. Seigo, having hidden after burying the general's body, was found by American soldiers. They decided not to kill him, and at that moment, he rebelled.
Did I shoot him, Lieutenant?
No, don't shoot him.
Crazy!
Eventually, Seigo was saved by the American soldiers. Decades later, Japanese archaeologists discovered the letters that Seigo had buried. These letters became an important historical artifact for Japan, and it was from these letters that the film was made. The film concludes. From this film, we can learn that war brings only suffering and does not lead to prosperity. It is hard to understand why, in the past, people believed that war would bring prosperity to their countries. In the end, peace is what prevails. How many billions of lives have been lost over unclear struggles for power? Remember, only God holds control over everything. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.